Welcome to Season 11 of Limited Supply, a place for hot takes on what it's really like building and scaling consumer brands. I'm your host, Nick Sharma. Let's get into today's episode. As a brand, you know that you're spending your hard-earned dollars driving traffic to your site. The problem is 98% of that traffic is anonymous. You don't know who they are, and once they leave, it's hard to find them again. There's a new tool that helps you identify these visitors and get in front of them. It's called Instant. Instant gives you another chance to convert these shoppers into buyers using their retention marketing platform. You can use their platform to send up to 10 times more site abandonment emails, which you know generate meaningful revenue and build audiences to retarget on Meta. Double your email revenue and increase your ROAS with Instant. Want to see it in action? Don't miss your chance. Sign up by April 1st to get your first month free. Just go to instant.one/limited to claim it. That's instant.one/limited. Welcome back to another episode of Limited Supply. I'm your host, Nick Sharma, and today we've got a fun episode. We're actually going to be diving into listener mailbag questions. But before we do that, a couple of notes. One, if you haven't seen our State of the DPA report, check that out. Just go to nick.co/DPA report, all lowercase, and you'll see that. It's a report we did with Marpipe analyzing about $2 billion in DPA revenue, and understanding what types of DPAs are working, what video DPA looks like, and also, how do you leverage DPA on platforms like TikTok and Snap, which is a platform, TikTok specifically, I was just speaking with our team this morning, is a DPA platform doing extremely well. Secondly, is if you're going to Shop Talk next week, hit me up on Twitter. We've got an event we're throwing and would love to see you there. And third is, I hope you enjoy this episode. This is going to be a fun listener mailbag episode. If you're not in our Slack community, make sure you sign up. And there's about 6,000 marketers there who are chatting daily. There's no sales pitches. There's none of that. In fact, we have a guy who's specifically hired, his name is Shin, to kick people out if they do any sort of sales pitches or try to take advantage of the group. So there's none of that. I highly recommend you join, and I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, welcome back to another episode of Limited Supply. We're going to dive right in. So the first question comes from Deb, and Deb asked, what is the best way to increase AOV? Offers, bundles, A/B testing your product page. Break it down for me. Well, I'll tell you, and again, this is all kind of off the cuff. So here are my initial thoughts. Increasing AOV starts with the messaging that leads somebody into the brand, and obviously carries its way through the entire commerce experience. So what do I mean by this? You need to message accordingly as you're driving people to the brand. So for example, if you are, supplement brands actually do a really good job of this because they try to encourage somebody to subscribe, or for somebody to wait to see results, until their third order, or maybe they're 9 weeks in, whatever it may be. But it really starts with the messaging. And a lot of times this means, focusing on things like the routine, focusing on consistency, focusing on, the effect of compounding products mixed together or used together. Anyways, that's where it starts. And then, of course, as you click and get to whether it's a landing page, a listicle, a product page, the home page, wherever you're driving traffic, you want to focus on bundles. You want to focus on kits. You want to focus on sort of creating a customer offer that brings somebody in and allows them to sample enough products or try enough variants in order for them to figure out what is the right one for them to subscribe to. Or maybe it's just that, if you're taking, for example, Lemmy, the supplement brand, actually does a really good job of this. If you go to their site, they just start having bundles merchandised because, yes, you can buy the individual products, but they work much better when you build them together or you buy a bundle. So bundles for sure do really well. Offers, I think, are another great place to do well. We've seen that anytime we've built a build your own bundle style page, we usually tend to gamify those. So for example, you add 3 things to your cart, you get some sort of a discount. You add 6 things, you get a bigger discount. You add 9 things, you get a greater discount. But again, offers is a great lever there. Bundles is obviously a great lever. Now, A/B testing the PDP, you want to be careful here. You can for sure A/B test your product page, but you want to make sure the things you're optimizing for are the right things. So for example, I saw a test earlier today where they thought that they just achieved the higher conversion rate by adding the add or pay with Shop Pay button on their product page. But what they didn't realize is their revenue per session is actually down by about 60%, even though conversion rate is up. So again, not the right thing to look for there. And yeah, I mean, honestly, you just got to, first of all, you have to put yourself in the mindset of a consumer. what is actually useful to them, what is actually helpful to them, and think through your own product offering. Is what you're pushing, is that actually going to benefit them in the long run? Because if it's not, then that's not something they're going to continue to come back and purchase. You want to make sure that the value exchange is even, meaning what they're paying for feels even in terms of the value they're getting in return. That's like, step zero. After that, you can figure out, are you upselling? Are you cross-selling? Are you testing out bundles? Are you testing out kits? If I go to the Salud website and offer to buy and try to buy a single stick pack, I'm going to see a button that says for me to upgrade my order into a bundle because I'm going to get a discount. Those types of things are great, and those are great things to A/B test on your product pages. But again, be very careful that you are optimizing toward a certain metric, whether it's AOV, whether it's revenue per session, whether it's UPT, which is units per transaction or number of items in the cart. Stay consistent with what you're measuring. And those are all great ways to build AOV. Obviously, down the funnel, for example, if you go to Jackson, the men's jewelry, they do a really good job of this. If you add something to the cart, you see a very nice pop-up module to add the other thing. Plunge, the ice cold plunge. If you add a plunge to the cart without adding the filters, they do a nice job showing you filters upsell. And even their messaging there is great. It's like, yes, I want clean water, or no, I'm fine with dirty water, right? So it kind of taps into the psychology a little bit. Another example I had in mind is just thinking about, how kind of like Rebuy, for example, sells a lot of their stuff, which is the in-cart upsells, which I think a lot of people don't play with enough. The in-checkout upsells. So again, obviously, if you're customizing your checkout on Shopify Plus, you've got social proof, but also being able to add complementary products right in the checkout to your order. And then, of course, post-purchase checkout. So we have already got your payment token, or you as the brand, you've already got the payment token from the order. That payment token has a expiration of, I don't know if it's 10 minutes, 30 minutes, or 60 minutes, but it does have an expiration, and the post-purchase upsell plays on that. So you give the opportunity to get, the same price same product or a different product at a discounted price, and get somebody to add it on. And they don't have to re-input their credit card info because you've already got that from the purchase that just happened. So you can essentially what that does from an architecture standpoint, it delays the order from being fulfilled. It lets a customer choose if they want to upsell or if they want the upsell product. If they say no, the order gets pushed to fulfillment. If they say yes, the order gets modified, your card gets charged, and then they push it to fulfillment. Yeah, hopefully that helps, Deb. That's how I would focus on increasing AOV. I think, outside of that, like outside of the tactical marketing stuff, any sort of like awareness or content or seeding that you do, really focus on those bundles and focus on multiple products. Focus on the messaging around why you should have multiple products, because I think that's where a lot of people tend to not focus. They just focus on using Rebuy or upselling into a bundle or creating a build your own bundle, but they don't focus on A, they don't focus on the messaging that's coming in, and B, they don't necessarily focus on the even how those orders or bundles are being pushed out to the fulfillment center, which causes a lot of issues depending on your setup in fulfillment. But make sure that the way it's feeding in is also, it's being read properly, so there's no issues when those orders are being fed into your 3PL. Okay. Next question comes from Chris. Chris says, what's the best way to test new product concepts or value propositions before launching the product? I love this question, Chris. A few people had this question or a similar-ish question of basically, how do I test stuff? And there's a couple ways to do it. There is there's a quick and easy way to do it. You've got to have maybe a few $1,000, but essentially what you do is, if your brand already exists, then use your brand page and create a landing page and drive traffic and see what happens, right? So new product concepts, you can have different product concepts on that landing page, and you can test email opt-in, you can test engagement of add to cart, you can test engagement of what is the actual conversion rate of those products. If you don't have that set up, you just want to check, you want to test it one step higher, you can just have these different concepts as ads that drive to a page. And you just basically understand click-through rate. That's the easiest way. I would also test the value props before launching a product is just run some ads to a landing page or to a product page and understand, make static ads in Figma. You can either get a template online or just design them yourself, or find some really good ones that you see and just copy them. But the copy that takes up most of the static ad is what you're testing. So those are the value props you're testing. put them in an ad set, start running them, and see which one gets the highest click-through rate, or if you're selling the product already, which one gets the highest conversion rate. And that'll give you a good understanding of what are people actually clicking on, what are they reacting to. Sometimes it's not just the messaging you want to test. You want to understand, does it work better as a lifestyle shot, a studio shot, a UGC shot, black and white versus color, animation versus video, whatever it may be. These might be things you want to test, and this is the best way to test it, is just really looking at click-through rate. And then, of course, if you have the down funnel events, then you can look at those analytics as well. If you don't have any dollars to spend, but you happen to be good at social media, which again, remember, if you're not good at organically creating content and putting it out, you end up paying the delta, the difference in ads. So what I just talked about was assuming you don't have good handle on organic social or an easy way to produce content, which unfortunately is most, then you run it with ads. However, if you do have the social side, whether you have 4,000 followers or 40,000 or 4 million followers, you can actually test a lot of this messaging either through polls or through understanding the click-through rate, but really it's just a swipe up or clicking a link sticker in stories. You can test this with email subject lines and look at the open rate. You can test it inside the emails, looking at the click rate of who's clicking based on the messaging. And basically all you're looking for is a conversion event, and to understand what impact does your test have on the conversion event. In the ads that I was just talking about, the conversion event I was mainly talking about was click-through rate. If you're doing it on organic social, maybe it's votes, like in a poll on stories, or maybe it's swipe ups or link in bio clicks or link sticker clicks, but that's all measurable. That could be your conversion event. And in the latter idea with email, it could either be your open rate or your click rate. It could also be your placed order rate if you want, but I would imagine that open rate and click rate are probably better. Okay, moving on to the third question. This one comes from Tyrell. And his question is, any advice on a food or beverage brand using local delivery services like Uber Eats, DoorDash, or GoPuff? Well, couple ideas have come to mind. One, if you're talking about selling as a store on Uber Eats or DoorDash or a Postmates, kind of one of these marketplaces, then I would advise you to honestly look at what some of these ghost kitchens are doing. Jeff Bezos, I believe, it's either Jeff Bezos or the guy who was behind Walmart and Jet.com, started a food court concept called Wonder. I could be butchering this, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And they've got great inspiration if you're setting up a store in terms of how you do deals, how you leverage offers inside Uber Eats and DoorDash, how you do photography, messaging, garner reviews, decide which ones to focus on and highlight. Even the inserts you get when your order is delivered, look at them. I think that's a great example. There's also tend to be, just a number of ghost kitchens that do this much better than most restaurants do. So that's great for if you're trying to understand like how to do it best practice wise. Now, GoPuff is different because GoPuff, you have a couple of options. One is if you're in GoPuff's, select beta program, which I don't know how many listeners are, but you have the ability to actually fulfill an order through GoPuff and collect the order on Shopify.com. So your .com website, you go there, you purchase Sprit Society as a drink, but then you get it delivered within 2 hours via GoPuff. There used to be another fulfillment company that did this 2-hour delivery. And I don't know if they're still around, but it's a very interesting concept, and it's phenomenal for driving sampling, which is huge in beverage because the entire, thing you're going after is sips to lips or cans in hands, whatever you want to call it. You're trying to sample as much as you can. So using a program like this with GoPuff does really well to drive sampling. Now, separately, if you're on places like GoPuff and Instacart and Amazon Fresh, then I would also recommend you start playing. First of all, make sure your listings look really good, right? Think of your product carousel as a landing page, same thing in like TikTok Shop. Think of your descriptions as your supporting copy for that landing page. And secondly, I would say like start testing ads. GoPuff, Instacart, Amazon Fresh. They have, I haven't personally run ads myself, but I have colleagues who do, and obviously share a bunch of clients with companies that are running these ads, and they work extremely well. You can pretty much optimize for entirely net new customers which is amazing as a feature. And they do really well for driving sampling in store. GoPuff also has a ton of different like inventory, whether it's throwing a product in as a free insert. For example, last week, if you ordered on GoPuff in New York, you got a free half day's iced tea. They also have the ability to just buy sponsored placements in the app. So as soon as you open the app, as soon as you open into a category, you'll see it there. The last thing I'll say is Instacart. I don't know if this has changed, but the last time I looked at Instacart ads last year, you don't even pay unless somebody clicks. So if you're a tequila brand and you are advertising for the keyword, gluten-free tequila, flavored tequila, whatever it may be, but somebody sees your ad and doesn't click it, you don't even get charged, but you still show up, which is amazing, right? That's great from a brand standpoint. So I would look into all that. And this brings us to our next question from Chris, which is suggestions on how a brand can navigate the transition from primarily direct-to-consumer to rapidly expanding in retail through paid and owned channels. Well, first of all, my recommendation about going into retail is like you shouldn't go into retail unless you feel like you can truly drive sell-through in there. There are obviously a lot of instances where brands go into retail and they just start clicking. I invested in a brand called Geelish, and that's one of them where they jumped into Sprouts and all of a sudden it started working really well. However, I don't think that's normal for most brands. In fact, most brands that go into, let's say, a Target or a Walmart or any sort of a retailer, it's really on them to either A, be able to sell the product like crazy. Think like, the same way that somebody starts to see it, or basically driving traffic to drive sell through. Or B, you end up buying a lot of these sponsored placements inside the store, whether it's the Target Red app, whether it's the Target catalog on Sunday, whether it's end caps, whether it's near the register, whether it's buying placement on Target.com in the baby guide, so you see Lalo as the first image, whatever it may be, you've basically got to figure out how you're driving traffic. So fundamentally, or to minimize it as much as possible, the entire game or the entire answer to suggestions on how you can navigate the transition is you just need to make sure you can drive traffic. I've seen it a couple different ways with different brands. There's one brand I can think of where they started to run ads driving to a landing page. You put your phone number in, you are basically told like, hey, if you go buy this product, we're going to Venmo you $5 back. You take a picture of the receipt, you text it to the company. The company also gets a good understanding of which Target you're buying from, what are the other products you're getting in this order, and then they'll reimburse you that way. So that's one way, but that's very tactical. Strategically, you just need to drive eyeballs. Tactically, that's how you do one of it. Secondly, you could do, you could kind of focus on what I call the Mr. Beast play, which is how do you just flood awareness at the top and make sure that you have distribution at the bottom in order to support. Another alcohol brand we worked with when they launched in Target and Walmart and Costco, we just started turning our email list into sort of a CRM to drive retail sales. So, e-commerce didn't become as big of a focus, obviously, in alcohol. And honestly, most categories, you have the bigger opportunity in retail. Not always the case, but in a lot of cases for food and bev. And so we started chopping up the email list down to zip codes and understanding exactly where we could drive traffic and how we could do it and what messaging we could push and how we could tie the promotions and retail back to what we're sending online. But anyways, you've basically just got to figure out how you're going to get people to the store in order to buy it. I remember back in the day, movement watches, I think when they launched on Nordstrom, they took their most, 2 or 3 most popular styles online, marked them as sold out and said, go buy them here instead. That drove a ton of traffic there and it was great. All that said, you've got to figure out what is that sustainable way to basically drive retail sales. And essentially that's driving really good sampling and then driving repeat purchases through people in those different geos. Some of the stuff I just mentioned is kind of like one shot or very like limited time strategic stuff, but may not fit that overall bill. Maybe what I'll do too is either at the end of this season or the beginning of next, I'll get a couple of retail founders or founders that started D2C and went retail quickly and expanded and get them to share all about it. Hundreds of brands like Garrett Popcorn, July Luggage, and Selfie Leslie are making six figures in incremental revenue through Instant's supercharged retention marketing platform. It takes 15 minutes to go live, and you see results within just days. You most likely already send site abandonment emails, but because most of the traffic on your site's anonymous, you don't get to email 98% of these visitors. Instant gives you another chance to convert these visitors into buyers and send 10 times more cart abandonment emails than you were before, helping you double your abandoned flow revenue. Want to see it in action? Don't miss your chance. Sign up by April 1st to get the first month free. Go to instant.one/limited. That is instant.one/limited to learn more. Okay, next one come from Paul. Paul asks, where are you finding the best marketing talent these days? Are there specific platforms, communities, or strategies you found most effective for hiring great people? Well, Paul, I'll tell you, if you're not in the limited supply Slack community, I would recommend that. There's about 5,000 or 6,000 people there every month who are all marketers in direct consumer in our world of e-commerce who are jamming, talking about different ideas, etc. Yeah, honestly, it's hard to find good marketing talent. The problem is, or maybe not the problem, but there's been this shift, obviously, in what is marketing talent and what are different roles, right? Like the head of growth role that I used to have 8 years ago is no longer a realistic role. Like that's now been disseminated into 4 to 6 different roles between media buyers and creative analytics and channel managers and whatever you want to call it. So I think that's one tough part. I've just found that, first of all, the smartest people in marketing are not on, they don't have podcasts, they don't have Twitter accounts, they're not posting on LinkedIn on a daily basis. They're not in this same rat race, you could say. And so for me, I don't know. I do dinners all the time with our clients, with potential clients, with just dope marketers, or I do events with really cool marketers. So that's where I tend to find the best talent, is just inviting these people to events or to dinners, or just talking to them. Maybe they have a friend, they know somebody else. I've always found that once you find a good person, whether it's a graphic designer, a video editor, media buyer, CMO, like they know the other great people in their space too. So figuring that out is one opportunity. The other one is using a recruiter. Honestly, the first probably few years of Sharma Brands, I never used a recruiter, but now it's just a lot more cost effective and time effective for me to use a recruiter. So they can go and they can screen people. They can basically reach out and try to snipe people versus the other way around of, hey, come find our job post if you're interested, and then click apply and submit any additional details. Here it's just like, hey, this is the job. We think you're going to be good for X, Y, and Z reasons. Are you down to have a call? And those tend to work well. So all that said, I don't think there is a specific platform. I would say join our Slack community because I'm biased, but you want to probably work with a recruiter. And if you need any recommendations, feel free to shoot me an email, just n@sharma.com. Okay. Jan wants to know, what is the most optimal team setup for a brand running DTC in 2025? What functions should be internalized versus outsourced? It's a great question. And I got this question probably 3 or 4 times. To be honest, it is quite different for each one. I'll give you a couple examples of brands that I've seen recently that I think are interesting and also staying very lean and efficient. So, one comes to mind. This is a it's actually a very well-run brand, probably going to be approaching the 9-figure revenue mark, either by the end of this year or next year. They've got 4 people internally as full-time employees, co-founders, a marketing lead, and a retail sales lead. And that's pretty much it. Everything else, they just hired a growth marketer. So now they've got 5 people, and everything else is outsourced. Media buying is outsourced. Creative is outsourced. Actually, a lot of their creative just comes internally from customers and creators. Media buying is outsourced. Measurement is outsourced. Any sort of displays that are needed, whether it's for retail or for events, activations, that's all outsourced. And, for the most part, they do all this with 5 people. So that's one way to do it. Granted, their business is set up in a way that they're a heavy subscription business. So, they're set up differently. Now, there's a supplement business that I know of that's about that'll hit probably the 50 million mark this year. Bootstrapped, started about 2 years ago. They've got two co-founders. One is entirely focused on kind of like marketing and sales, and one's entirely focused on product. And then I believe they have 3 or 4 internal people just on the marketing side, 2 or 3 people who are shared with other brands on supply chain and ops, and then agencies for the rest. Another brand that comes to mind is about to launch, big celebrity beauty brand. They've got 3 people internally, and then everybody else is agencies. So to be honest, as you can see, it's different per brand. I think that there's a way where you can essentially have, the founders. The way that I like to do it is I like to think you want the founders, obviously internal, and you kind of want your key quarterbacks internal. Everything else, execution wise, can either be offshore talent, agencies, freelancers, contractors, or sort of like fractional roles. You don't necessarily need to have everybody internally. And also depends like how big your revenue is. So for example, if you're doing $100 million a year in revenue, or sorry, if you're doing $4 million a year in revenue, you probably don't need a full-time UX UI designer. Maybe you just need a contractor or a small agency. If you're doing, $10 million a year, you're probably not wanting to have an internal function for that. You probably just want to work with an agency like a Sharma Brands, take care of it, design, dev, QA, all that, right? Done. Now, if you're a brand doing $100 million and you're constantly making changes to your site because your model is more focused around like a drop model, then maybe it makes sense to hire somebody internally to handle that, because now you're not paying an agency fee, and you sort of get the skill level you'd get with a good, well-talented agency versus maybe like somebody who's offshore and where you're optimizing for cost. So there's different ways to do it. The other thing I'll say too is agencies are great for testing new stuff. So if you're just launching on TV, you're just launching on TikTok, you're just launching on Shopify, you're just, wherever you're just launching, agencies are great. They bring all the learnings. They know exactly what to do, what not to do. There's so many times where I'll talk to brands and say, you're doing what? Because I already know the patterns they should follow or what they should do or not do, or who to work with, who not to work with. So that said, there's different setups, but you kind of got to figure out what's right for you. If you have anything specific or you want to share any more context, feel free to drop it in the Limited Supply Slack, and I'll try to get back to you on that. Okay, next question comes from Brad. Brad says, thoughts on top of funnel strategies and its effects on meta performance. Well, Brad, we've done a lot of studies on this in the last 6 to 8 months. And obviously, when I first started running TV probably 7 years ago, I saw the effects directly. And then, as I started working with more and more celebrity brands, and, they come with their own sort of top of funnel, those clearly showed the power of top of funnel and good top of funnel too. So, the punchline is that the way, or at least the way I like to think about it is, you've probably seen that movie Cars where Lightning McQueen's rebuilding the road, and, you've got, he's paving the road when it was smooth and not when it was super bumpy. And then there's cars behind it. The paving the road is how I think about top of funnel and awareness. And the cars behind it is how I think about like running meta ads. You can't run meta ads in a clear, cost-effective, friendly to your wallet way unless you've got good awareness before that, or pre-existing that. So whether it's TV ads, that TV ads, billboards, these like large celebrity campaigns with Sydney Sweeney, for example, like that's what most people think of when they think of top of funnel. But if you want to get a little bit more precise, anything even from whitelisting with creators, product seeding on TikTok, advertorials, like these are all also a lot more kind of what I call lower funnel, upper funnel stuff that have similar effects to what you can do on Meta. There was also another test that just came out. It may have been from House or it may not have been, but basically when TikTok went away, the cost of CPMs went up on Facebook. And, although it's more like, I don't know if it's correlation or causation, but you can basically, if you're running TikTok well, TikTok is very equivalent to a TV. TikTok is Gen Z's TV in terms of how I think it drives interest and excitement and influence in the Gen Z mind or brain. So all that said, definitely focus on top of funnel strategies. Again, it could be something as simple as dinners and influencer events and activations and advertorials and whitelisting creators, and as crazy as, citywide takeover campaigns and billboards and all that stuff. But all of that has a direct effect on Meta's performance being better. Again, with Meta, and back to what I said earlier, with ads, you're basically paying for eyeballs that you can't get on your own. If you can get eyeballs on your own, whether that's through word of mouth, whether that's through organic content, whether that's through people talking about you, your Meta ads are just going to convert better. If you've ever looked at like one of these old school retailer brands you see in a mall and looked in their Meta account, you'll see that their acquisition cost, if you take two clothing brands, one is a direct consumer clothing brand, been around for even 5, 6, 7 years. And one is a, Fortune 500 mall retailer that you would think is dead, right? Quote unquote dead. Their CPAs are $20 in the mall brand and maybe 120 on the DTC brand. And the only difference is just that there is significantly more top of funnel for those mall brands. They're a recognized name. You don't have to do the work of, is this a legit brand? Am I going to like it? What about returns? What about customer satisfaction? Whatever it is, you don't necessarily have to think about any of that. And that's why their CPAs are so low. Same thing with influencer brands. The reason that a Feastables or a Brian Johnson or Lola V or Love Wellness or any of these brands have lower CPAs than their competitors, it's simply because the top of funnel is basically being done as a byproduct of that celebrity co-founder or operator. You can't obviously recreate that. Well, you kind of can if you have a good content or a good content engine like Kanpai Foods. But hopefully that gives you the punchline. Okay, Lars asks a very relevant question to the last one. How do you negotiate access for whitelisting with creators? Do you see performance differences between partnership ads and creator run ads? Well, the best legal route here is running these paid partnership ads. So that's one. The other way you can do it is, well, actually, they should all be paid partnership ads. So whether you just whitelist a piece of content that the influencer posted and tagged you as a paid partner, that's one way to do it. Obviously, there you get all the engagement that comes with that original post. The second way is you basically import the account into your business manager. We use a tool called Leadsy to help do that with creators and do it quickly. Once you get the account in, then, you basically, let's say you work with a creator, you pay them a couple $1,000. This is not a famous influencer, but a content creator who makes good video ads. Pay them $1,000, a couple $1,000. The way that we do it is we write out specific hooks, specific talking points, specific outros, specific call to actions. And then it allows us to, and of course the different B-roll, and then it allows our team to go and take one creator and make 15 to 20 videos versus just paying for one video and then, kind of being stuck with that. So because we like to make 15, 20 videos out of that, the paid partnership stuff is great. But what I like to do is import their Instagram and or Facebook account and then run whitelisted ads, obviously still tagging paid partner as the brand in all the ads, because you have to either do that or you have to mention it in, or I think you have to do that and you have to mention it in either the ad text or the headline in order to avoid being, flagged. And then I would just run it. So like when I did this 8 years ago with Sarah Dici, for example, she created the content. I chopped it up, and I think we launched with 96 different variations of ads, different ad copy, different headlines, different hooks. And, eventually 3 or 4 of them ended up scaling to probably $20,000, $30,000 a day in spend. So that's how I would do it. You mentioned creator run ads. I'm not sure what that means, if that's whitelisting without whitelisting the organic piece, but kind of the way I was just talking about it, where you bring them into your business manager. In either case, what I mentioned is how I would go about it. If you want to take it one step further, you make the coupon code, if you have one, named the creator's name with a discount, or, Sarah VIP, Sarah 20, Sarah Peachy 20, whatever it may be. You could also have a landing page where, it's got Sarah's favorites as a bundle or Huberman's favorites as a bundle. Or it just speaks to why does this person actually like this product? Why does this person use this product? Just give it more context. You want to always make sure that if you've got, especially like a famous influencer or celebrity that You have context as to why is this person interacting with this random brand that is on my Instagram ad? You want to make sure that that's not clear, because if you don't, then I believe that you are, you're giving somebody the reason to think that something is not real or it's facetious. I don't know. I'm just a fan of giving somebody the most context and then letting them decide whether or not your brand, your product is the right fit for them. Okay, last question here for this round of the listener mailbag is from Lisa. She says, when and why is it worthwhile building a campaign landing page? Pros and cons of doing this in-house versus with an agency. Well, Lisa, in my personal opinion, I think the more you can drive traffic to a landing page, the better. Now, why is that? Well, a landing page tends to, if you think about a homepage or a collections page or a product page, they tend to be very templated. Most brands will find a template on that they buy, a Shopify template, and then sometimes add to it, but most of the time just kind of swap things out for what they want to include on those pages. Now, these pages tend to not include things like comparison charts or when's my order shipping or a bunch of social proof in the form of UGC videos or publisher reviews or customer written reviews or screenshots from ad comments, whatever it may be. So anyways, the reason I like landing pages, especially for paid traffic, is because if you're spending money on that click, bringing somebody to the site, you want to make sure that you vomit everything this person could possibly need in order to make an educated decision of whether or not they should buy and try your product. So that's when I think you should use a landing page. Basically, anytime you're driving paid traffic, whether it's with influencers, PR, ads, billboards, TV commercials, hell, even if you're doing a promo at a coffee shop, right, and you're giving out cards, you should have a landing page that people are going to so that they feel like that experience is continuous versus just randomly now landing on a homepage, which has no context as to what the ad said. It probably speaks differently in a way of how the ad was speaking about the problem solution. That said, pros and cons of doing this in-house versus with an agency. My recommendation, which, is essentially what killed the hooks business, but I stand by it because I think it's more founder friendly, is work with an agency to build a number of page templates in Shopify. So these should be Shopify page templates that you can easily go in and duplicate and reuse and change the copy, change the imagery, change the offer, the merchandising, etc. And then make all those changes in-house. So whether you have somebody who's offshore who's kind of helping you, whether you've got an intern or a junior person who's getting in and just helping you whip up new pages based off the 5 templates that you've made. You could have a build your own bundle template. You could have a listicle template. You could have a comparable template. You could have a hero product bundle template. You could have a single SKU product template. And you could probably have more too, but those are 5 that I just came up with. And if you had those built and put into Shopify, you could very easily click the duplicate button and boom, you've got a whole new page, a whole new listicle that you can fill out and A/B test driving traffic to with something like IntelliGems. Or if you've got that offer bundle landing page, boom, duplicate it, test a new bundle and A/B test and see which one drives a better conversion rate or a better overall customer. That's how I would do it. The reason that it killed hooks is because I never wanted to charge a founder based on usage or a monthly fee to just host their pages. So a brand would come to us, build 10 pages, and then they would never need us again, which was obviously great for them. It was not as great for us, but I don't think it's right to charge people on a usage basis for something that should be living in their own Shopify or in an environment where they can go in and make changes at no cost. All right. Well, those are the questions for today. Hopefully that was helpful and it was fun to listen to. If you've got any questions that we missed out on, go to our Slack. Go to limitedsupplypod.com. If that doesn't work, try slack.limitedsupplypod.com, although it should automatically redirect. And join the Slack community. This is where we are basically asking, for listener mailbag episodes, what questions you have. So all these ones came in. I didn't get to all of them. Maybe what I'll do is the ones I didn't get to, I'll turn that into a newsletter. If you're not signed up for that, go to nick.co/email. That's nik.co/email. And I'll see you next week. Next week, we actually have a fun episode. And so I'm excited for that. But I'll see you next week. Have a great week and a great weekend. And if I will see you at Shop Talk, I'm excited to see you at Shop Talk. DM me if you're going on Twitter. Otherwise, see you next Wednesday. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time to cut through the noise on CPG, retail, and e-commerce. If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend? And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss the next one.